had brought up was like making it so that sidewalks are in all areas, like new developments. I am not against sidewalks, but I also see the detriment of them as well, and Jeff and I were talking about this, like when you've got people that are older, you now have to shovel your sidewalk if there's a sidewalk, you've got to go out and, you know, if there's leaves on or whatever, you have like a legal responsibility if somebody were to walk on that. And maybe a happy medium, which was one of the things Mark wanted anyway, was to have the roads and developments being wider. And I live in Floral Hill, people walk the streets there all the time, they don't have to go on the sidewalk, everybody's fine. It's great, it'd be nice if our roads were a little wider, yeah. But maybe that's a happy medium, to have the developments having wider roads with no sidewalks. Because that responsibility long-term, then who's gonna fix them, and I wish George could have been here tonight too, because he could have told you all the issues they have with their HOA, and you know, that's another thing, we have all these HOAs starting, and I just don't hear good things happening with them. Like I said, their HOA is, like, it's a hot mess, and what people want and don't want, and want to change the rules after they move in there, and, you know, you just got a lot of animosity in a community then. But that, like I said, that was just one of the things Jeff and I talked about, I said, just, and knowing in East Washington, what it costs people to have their sidewalks repaired, because one of the things Mark wanted was trees, and I'm like, then you have the trees, and then the trees can buckle the sidewalks, you know what I mean, like, there's so many things that I wouldn't want a sidewalk. I don't want anybody walking through my yard, you know, in the front yard, and it's great in certain communities, and if you're down south and there's no snow and there's no ice or anything like that, but that was just my 2 cents as to one of the things Mark had asked you guys to discuss tonight, and my feelings on like having sidewalks in an area like this. I don't think that's something, I understand what Mark's purpose is, and I get that, but I think wider streets would be equally, that it would serve the same purpose for what he was looking for. So that's it, guys, thank you.
Thanks, Susie.
Good ideas.
Okay, so we are not reviewing the minutes from the last meeting at this point in time. I guess we'll do them at the next meeting. Okay.
Why are you reviewing on this thing, Tom?
We don't have them in front of us right now to review.
Okay, I was just curious because, okay, that's, okay.
There's only so much time in the day.
No, I understand that, it's just that there's, this is sort of in limbo with the supervisors and for the minutes for what happened at the last meeting, and that would be something like that nobody was able to even read the minutes as to what happened, because like they couldn't be put into evidence for the hearing at the supervisors because they weren't done yet, so that's, I just curious.
We do have the court reporter. So that we do that.
Yeah, full transcript of that, but it also doesn't really matter what happens here anyway once you get to the supervisors. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's not relevant to it's a de novo hearing in front of them, but I mean.
But I'll tell you what, Tom, they did take in, you should watch the video. The group that was here told another group of lies at that one. They wouldn't even admit that they were related to the guy that was bringing it forward. Like, I mean, it's been in the paper. It was a hot mess.
That is kind of bizarre.
Yeah, it's, like you said, so it's not that they didn't take what you said to heart, it's what.
I don't mean that they didn't, I just mean that, the minutes wouldn't have been approved for that meeting anyway.
I know, but there's still
Because this
another,
was our next meeting.
there's still another meeting, we still have to finish the hearing on that too, so.
Okay, they didn't close, you don't
No,
think?
they closed it.
They closed the hearing.
Hearing's
They
closed.
might have closed it. but
They
I
just
don't-
didn't make a decision.
They didn't
I
make a
think.
decision, but I don't know if the minutes can be, if it can be, can they open it up again after they close it?
If they closed the hearing, then I think they probably, I don't know, I wouldn't, they probably closed the record too,
Okay.
but that's okay.
We can
I
always,
understand it.
push comes to shove, the minutes can always be emailed to us, we can look at them and approve them.
Yeah.
Send them back to the supervisor with that, those. we get it done. Or approve,
Thank you.
I think, right?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you have to announce it so people could, even to do that. To be I'm just telling you, the sunshine law. Just.
It's sunny out today.
It's sunny out.
Yeah.
All right. We talked about the minutes more than we talk about the minutes when we have the minutes to review. All right, next item, we have a review and discussion of the zoning code bulk standards planned residential development standards and standards of subdivision land development ordinance, commonly known as the PRD and SALDO.
So this is something the board wanted to, for the planning commission to take a look at, review, see if anything should be changed, can be changed. So given what Judy had said during public comment, yes, Mr. Murphy was sort of the driving force behind that. And so what I'm thinking is that this is going to be somewhat of a process to review these and understand all these standards and how they work and where are we now, what do we want, and how do we get here. So I split this up. Tonight, we're going to review zoning, bulk conventional zoning, and PRDs. So when we talk about those things, we primarily talk about density. So I'm just going to go over just a couple things to set the stage. We have our zoning code and we have our subdivision and land development ordinance. So the zoning code regulates what you can do on property. It establishes districts. That is the main vehicle to allow that to occur. When we establish those districts, what we do is we further specify, one, those districts are exclusive. And then we further specify that the uses of land and buildings in those districts, the density, or sometimes referred to as an intensity, and then the bulk or the size of the buildings. I like to think of bulk as when I walk in a community or a neighborhood, how does it make me feel, right? You're trying to pay attention to and receive what you're getting back from that built environment, whether it's high, set back far, set back close. Then we have the SALDO. So SALDO governs the division of land. It helps us create an official record of lots to help establish title and property. It also governs the location, design, installation of infrastructure. It helps us develop our site plans and improve site plans. It gives standards to property owners and developers, what to build and how to build it. And then also, the main thing to keep in mind, the SALDO will defer to the zoning code, meaning that when you divide land, you divide it per what the zoning district is and what the lot width, lot depth, lot size requirements are. Now, there are a couple methods of zoning. Two that we have in front of us on a constant basis is conventional zoning and planned residential development. Conventional zoning is by the book. It's a strict adherence to what our code already provides us. Usually we call it permitted or as of right zoning. We also have another facet there is conditional use zoning. It's allowed, but allowed with certain restrictions for certain standards. Or you have special exceptions in Pennsylvania where that allows the zoning hearing board to make a ruling on a certain use in a certain location. And then we have 6 zoning districts that can have residential. We have the agricultural district, and then we have 5 residential districts. And remember, when you look at these numbers, what you're seeing is 1, 2 is least dense, all the way 3, 4, and 5 to most dense. So the R2 and R1 give us very half acre to acre lots, typical community zoning. Your R3 and R4 gives us a little denser of zoning. So when we talk about density, we'll get to that soon, we're talking about dwellings per acre. How many dwelling units can you put on an acre? And how many dwelling units per acre does your code allow? So the other method of zoning that we use is planned residential development. Or we like to just shorten that phrase and say PRD. I've saved so much ink by doing that. And with the PRD, remember, there are purposes behind the PRD. It relaxes the standards of conventional zoning to help developers, property owners to go ahead and be more creative in their design for how they want to present a community. It also promotes greater economic efficient use of land. You can increase the lots, get a greater return. You can shorten lot widths to minimize the cost for utility installation. You can use roads in a better, more efficient manner at times, which the municipality doesn't benefit from. It also provides compatible housing types. So you can have duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, or maybe a small, medium slung, residential building. And you can have those all in one community, so you're promoting different housing types, different types of families, whether they're senior families or grandma comes to live with the family or things like that. We also have amenities and community facilities that planned residential developments also provide. Amenities meaning sidewalks, street lighting, green parkways, community facilities, racquetball court, tennis court, basketball court, those are the things that we think of. Also, it helps us to preserve the natural scenic qualities and open space with the land that we have. One thing to keep in mind, the big difference that you get from planned residential development as opposed to conventional zoning is property owners, developers, it's a trade-off. If the township is relaxing standards and giving a developer property owner more economic and efficient use of land, the township gets in return the housing types, amenities, the facilities, and preservation of open space. It's a trade-off. So when we talk about what we're going to touch on a little bit tonight is density. We have low, medium, and high density. Again, density is dwellings per acre. Right now, we're referring to single family, just a single family house, detached house. So we have in the A1, your minimum lot size is 1 acre. In the R1 and R2, it could be 0.5 to 1 acre. And then we get a little more dense. You have 1/3 of an acre, 1/4 of an acre. We're going to leave R5 up here, but we're not going to really touch on that. That is that's high-rise residential. And there are some things I've identified that we may want to come back and take another look at R5 because I think there are some things that aren't interesting. So when compared density between conventional and PRD, this shows us the conventional zoning, and here's your district, and here's your PRD regulations. You can't have PRDs in agricultural and R1 districts. You can have PRDs in your R2, R3, and R4s. Your R2 density goes 1 to 1 and 1 dwelling per half acre all the way up to 4 dwellings per acre. In the R3, it goes up from 3 dwellings per acre to 6 dwellings per acre. In the R4 district, that allows from 4 dwellings per acre to 12 dwellings per acre. I know living in Strabane Manor, I think my lot, yeah, it's not even 1/3 of an acre. It's a very small, it's a denser community, townhome community. And so that's just an introduction to density. There are several other standards that we have in the code, in our toolbox, that help us affect development. Minimum lot area, lot width, maximum lot coverage, front yard, which is how far the structure is set back from the front yard, from the road. Your minimum setbacks on your rear and side yards, as well as the maximum height. All these things contribute to that great word bulk. So tonight, I wanted to make an introduction to this. There's going to be a lot of work involved with this. It's going to be several months. We're going to review some zoning code. We're going to review some saldo. Sometimes they'll overlap, sometimes they won't. But to have the conversation about, given what we've experienced in the last 3 to 4 years with the development having coming in, or actually just 2 years with the development that we've seen coming through pre-application and all the way through final approval, are we happy with it? And what levers can we pull to make ourselves happier or adjust? And so where we go from here, we can review specific township neighborhoods. What gives a neighborhood a certain feel or a certain liking? Pancake. quirky. Love it. Small lots, R4 district, a lot more old school. Old school as far as lot sizes, positioning of houses, setbacks and whatnot. We can review our most recent developments and see what standards were in play in those developments. And in municipal government, what we'd like to do is see how our surrounding communities are faring. Do they have other tools that we could be using to help ourselves accomplish the goal? And then if there's anything other during this conversation, you know, this is a conversation that we'll be having for a while, so. So I think tonight, this is just a brief introduction, and it's always nice to have a meeting where it's for us. So what we have here is we can begin to, and I would encourage the planning commission, we can take it slow. To really get it, for time, and staff that can address what we're wanting to do. But it might be a good idea to actually understand what the neighborhoods in the township, what do we like about them? What do we want to make sure that we can preserve about those characteristics? I think understanding about what we like about something in order to maybe proliferate it or make it bigger in the township may be a good start. So if over the next couple of weeks, if you wake up in the middle of the night and your light bulb goes on and call you, feel free to share thoughts and whatnot. But I think what we'll do is we'll start to talk about what our neighborhoods look like and what makes them that way.
Mr. Stanek, in your mind, do you have a date certain by which you would like to see this board commission have a final work product put together where you would say we've reviewed this over the course of time and we're prepared to make recommendations or make those thoughts, more cohesive? If you're thinking throughout the course of 2023, or you're thinking into next year, I just have no basis for time, that's all. I'm just asking what you think.
I would hope we can get it done before the end of the year.
Okay.
To present the board a recommendation on some of these things.
Thank you.
On all of these things.
Question.
Could I ask, and you can just send it to me because I'm kind of new at this. The most recent developments, because I don't know where they are. I know I complained about one of them that's got an association.
Orchid Manor is being done right now.
Okay, but there's one that has an owners association that I hear complaints about.
That's the guy who was in there. Who was that?
But that's George, that's,
There was a guy who was in there.
yeah, that's, Strabane Manor,
It's the only
I don't know where that is.
we've had, Strabane Manor.
Yeah.
Fisher Road.
So if you're going down 19,
Uh-huh.
do you know, the light by Davis School Road, that intersection,
Mhm.
Davis School Road, if you were to turn, if you're coming down the hill and you're at that light, Davis School's on your right, Strabane Manor's up there, or, yeah, well, that's.
Is it-
easiest
is
way to
it
say
all
It's
the
all
town-
of
the
It's a
townhouses?
townhouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
That go, that are behind.
Then back up to
Stone,
where the church was
wait,
wanted
what's
to be.
the-
Right.
Yeah, right.
Stone Creek Farm.
Stone Creek, as you get, you see the Stone Creek sign, but
Okay.
all up in there is Strabane Manor. Goes up and around the top of the hill almost.
They're still building there, or is that
They're
done?
almost done.
They're the very last, their last phase, right?
I think it's built out, right?
Yeah, they don't have any buildings left to
Yeah,
build.
it's built out.
No more Dan Ryan. Coming in.
No more subdivision.
No more subdivision, phase 4.
I think.
There's,
That's right.
and there's also Bradford
Bradford, yeah.
Run, and
That's true. Bradford.
That's Out Country Club Road, you can see it from 79.
Oh.
Yeah. And I will say this, and I know I have a big mouth and I talk a lot and I apologize, but Tom, you'll appreciate this. The Mitchells used to say this about me. There's telephone, television, and telejudy. And I talked to a lot of people, and my neighbors had friends that were living up in Bradford Run. They didn't even last a year there. They moved out. They couldn't stand how close it was. And where they wanted to move.
To the interstate?
No, to the
No,
houses,
yeah.
they did
Oh,
it like,
okay.
the how tight everything was. they were trying, and for some reason, everybody wants to live in Floral Hill. And
It's a nice neighborhood.
right, and again, so if we're looking at where people wanna move to and where they wanna live, Floral Hill, Daryl Price just sold his lot, he can't even build a house on for $56,000. Somebody bought one down the street, on our street years ago, the woman hasn't built yet, but I think she paid 60 and it's like nothing. But the point is that's the type of neighborhood that people still wanna, like, that's what South Strabane has been. Even if you go over to the hospital, it's not high density, even though,
Yeah, I live over near the house.
yeah, right, and so
I don't like the traffic, but that's a good neighborhood.
yeah, it's a, you know,
Lovely neighborhood.
and that's what we're looking at, and we've become something different. We have this high density now that's being pushed, that affects the schools, and I know a lot of people and I don't want to say anything to get them mad at me or whatever, tick, but there's stuff going on down in the valley where they're bringing in people like crazy. They're living 5 to 20 people in houses down in Charleroi. That's gonna move its way up here. And it's coming from the north. I've seen it. I collect data for the government. I see what goes on. I can tell you every problem in every township in this town, and Fayette now. But, you know, when we start going high density, we've had nothing but problems. The gunshot, remember a couple of years ago, oh gosh, the police were shot at, or somebody had their wife held hostage. Lady Zip goes read stuff out, things about, you know, it brings, and I collect data for the crime study for the government. You know, higher density, more rental properties, which is what high density tends to be, that creates more crime. That's more on your police, more on your, you know, like I said, our taxes are going up. And the only thing we're doing different is put more high density in everywhere. And if we would stick something more like Washington Woods, Bob Pollock, when he got on this board, one of the smartest comments I've ever heard, coming to meetings, and he said, what we could do is do what Peters has done and limit the amount of like 1 acre per house, and then do that and make it all R1s, because then we're limiting what's coming here. And then it's also nicer homes, so you're getting more bang for your buck. And instead we're doing the opposite, and we're putting in these planned communities that we go down to Strabane Manor. They don't have space. That's part of their lawsuit against the township. They never got what they were supposed to. They never got their walking trail. They never got anything. You know, it's great to put it on paper, but if nobody follows up and makes sure it happens either, then that's a whole nother story. But like I said, when people think about South Strabane are the used to be the neighborhoods, the Windsor Highlands, the Washington Floral Hill, over by the hospital. You know, yeah, sure, it's a little bit more high density in Patton. That's the older area, and same with Pancake. You look when those were developed at a time when we probably had no zoning. You know, Pancake's an old patch, what I would call like a patch area. And you look at most of South Strabane developed in the 60s and 70s. And when that development happened, out Locust and everything, they're neighborhoods. We used to have 5 parks, we have 4 now, which is plenty. Most people come and use our park over out on Floral Hill. We've got the one over by you, what is it, Dan? Thank you, I can remember Driscoll. But we've got, and we could, you know, probably even put in, we're running out of space. We're prime property and we're selling out to high density. And, you know, and you look at North Strabane, I mean, it's a hot mess over there. They just keep building like crazy, and it's affecting the school district. But like I said, if you guys are talking about looking at the neighborhoods, the most popular neighborhoods in South Strabane are the ones that aren't high density and are old school, and that seems to be what people want. Like, so the ones on Green Crescent, they would go on, you wouldn't even see a for sale sign, and they would sell, and one of them went 20,000 over asking price.
Same behind the hospital too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They sell, they don't even get the market.
yeah.
That's because there's no, we don't have housing.
Well,
I mean, that's why they're selling it like that. There's nowhere else to go. There's no market.
but it's.
There is no housing.
But it's a nice-
That's why.
But
It's a
there's
nice
new
neighborhood,
housing,
but-
there's new housing being built that people could wait for, and like I said,
Where?
people are, well, Bradford Run and some in North Strabane,
they're
their taxes are now
gone.
lower than ours.
Yeah.
The Bradford Run, like I said, they were moving out of there trying to find what that house on Green Crescent that that was on sheriff's sale and flipped over and all that. Oh my gosh, everybody wanted that stupid house and it's a hot mess. But people, that's where they wanna be. They want the quiet neighborhoods. And when you get some of these high density ones, it's also harder for kids to ride their bikes because people are driving. I drive in them all the time. And I think, why would you wanna live here? Because there's so many more homes and they're just cars nonstop. You go up in Floral Hill, everybody walks around, they walk their dogs, the kids play on the street. And that's what, like I said, that's, when I think of South Strabane, that's not what I think of.
Okay, thank you.
So anyway, sorry.
Sorry. Sorry.
I really don't like to talk, I just want to be
No, no,
Too much stuff goes through my head.
I don't believe so.
So, Brian, we're gonna be looking at what, our actual zoning districts and our requirements in those zoning districts as well, or are those pretty much okay? Are we more talking about adjustments to our PRD, or is it really both that we're talking about?
Well, I think it's gonna be PRD,
Yeah,
which is what we see now. It's gonna overlap given conventional zoning. I mean, if the planning commission or the township likes what it's seeing on Quarry Road from Lakeview to,
Snuffy?
not Snuffy, the single lot, the larger lots, the houses up on the hill, the larger
I
lots.
like you.
On,
Floral Hill
Quarry.
and
Quarry.
Quarry,
They're-
they're about built out, but Quarry's about
Scout,
built
like Scout
out.
Drive to,
I know, it says
To Lakeview.
Lakeview, yeah.
That's conventional zoning. I mean, would those pop for a development? I don't know. Given buildable land, I'm not sure. But I think what we want to pay attention to more specifically are PRDs, but if you want to see characteristics in a neighborhood that isn't PRD, then we need to understand what that looks like.
Well, and my concern with the PRDs has been, the location is the biggest concern and the biggest problem because of what we've talked about with roads and everything. Like PRDs are fine. Density is an issue and that's a question. That's what we look at when we look at those plans. But I mean, you're gonna have PRDs. You're not gonna just have 1 acre, half acre lots, but a one-off builder. I wish we had more of that. That was my business in the old days.
That's the old days.
And you'll get some of it, but those are the $1 million homes. That's not the homes the bulk homes that you're gonna see. You'll still have some of that. We still do have some of that. But there's gonna be PRDs and that's okay. But the problem is where they will work. And the infrastructure that needs to be there for those PRDs, in my mind. Again, if you have roads that aren't big enough to put lines on them, that's a problem for a PRD. So the problem is, that's an issue one of the big issues. Like Davis School Road's a big road. You could put a PRD and have them pump out onto that road and they're close to 19. What's wrong with that? That's okay. We have places like that it's okay. But we also have places, it just happens to be this nice open land somewhere, maybe, Zediker or something, but that's a little trickier when you start getting into places where those are still kind of countryish roads and aren't up to speed yet. Those roads need to be should be up to speed to make that easier.
Speed for a while.
Well, that's part of my concern with PRDs. I think PRDs are the only way you're gonna get those neighborhoods and those will come into place. You're not gonna see no one can do a development. It's just not the market. You can't have 100-acre parcel and develop it to sell off 1 acre lots and wait 15 years to build those lots out. No developer can do that. It's just not gonna happen.
Question, I have a question. Brandon, how many PRDs do we currently have either completed or underway in the township?
Underway, we have Perfect Manor, Bradford Run. Approved but not, no activity, Meadows Lane. Strabane Manor just finished. Cameron Estates finished. Washington Woods finished. Windsor, I believe, was under PRD.
I think Windsor was a PRD.
Oh,
But that would have been before they really were PRDs, but yeah.
Well, so
Right.
my following to that is, what I think we could do is look at those and see what each one of those pluses and minuses are in those different PRDs, to see whether or not we want to look at the PRD specification, for lack of a better word by usage, to see, okay, what worked here and what didn't work here, and do that for each one of those different PRDs.
Maybe incorporate some of the older, like behind the hospital, right, with Colonial Heights.
Right,
What works there.
right, because that is essentially, those lots are not compliant with the current zoning, I believe.
Probably not.
Yeah, so,
Because they're that.
so you can look at that, you can look at that as another thing, as a quasi PRD. Just a side note, before I forget about it, Brandon, what is going on at Burkett Manor?
In
That
regards to,
is regards the schedule for the site development, because it sure as heck to me looks like that should have been done a while ago.
oh, I can forward you what I have.
I mean, I don't know what their original schedule was, but as I look at that site, the amount of earth to be moved on the infrastructure there should no way be taking, what are we, 7 months in now, something like that?
They were delayed,
But
And the reason they give me is that they had a wet season this spring, so. I think they're going to
I
be.
mean, I've done a lot of site development over the years. Of course, for some weird reason, one of the problems with the construction industry now is things are taking longer to build instead of less time than before we had all the intelligent computerization and everything. It actually takes longer to build a building now than it did before, having nothing to do with permitting. So that's not, if somebody's going to bring up the idea of permitting, that's not a legitimate argument. But it just seems to me that there's something going on there other than some wet weather, because I don't think that this past winter was any worse than any other winters that we've had. In fact, it's been better.
With sewage connection. I think recently they had a hiccup with water. But in the last month and a half, they've been moving faster than they.
They've got some of their plateaus up there now where they're.
Right, so infrastructure is being laid, and I think what we've been told is we'll probably see a building permit for the model units sometime this spring before summer.
Okay,
Brandon,
because when I see something go that long, I always
What's your
concern
concern,
myself
though,
about,
Joe?
my concern is finance.
Run out of money.
They've been going.
Well, we got a bond, right? We got a bond, don't we?
Well, I'm sure we have a bond. A bond is a bond, but
Yeah.
if something goes wrong, then you have a mess. And I just think maybe it's time to just double
I
check.
check them out about once a week, okay? And I have another theory of what's taken so long over there. And it's the Achilles heel of many projects like that is geotechnical. Okay, I think they underestimate how much dirt they're gonna have to move to build that there, number one. And I think some of the soil they had wasn't suitable, right? And they were compacting and rolling. They were going crazy over there for a while, didn't do anything
Mhm.
except rolling with sheep's foot rollers and compacting. They got some issues.
Well, that's what I said. I know there are issues. I think we should know what they are. And I can accept an argument for almost anything except that if there's a financial issue, I don't know, that becomes a real concern for me.
I mean,
Because we were part of the approval process and letting that go through.
Well, Joe, you're making, that's a good point. It's what we've talked about before with the developments where there's a lot of earth movement and concerns for slippage and those kind of things. But I mean, we're involved and our engineers are involved in those testings and in those, and we've been through it before with the old mill, before it was the old mill, and lawsuits, those kind of things. So it's a good question to bring up, and I'm sure we're on top of it. And, that to me makes sense to be checking. And Scott can check with them and see if
You know,
anything's going on.
The
with
other
that. I
thing
think that makes
too,
a good
Grant,
point.
like Peters Township,
No, you're talking.
I
was just saying I see.
I was gonna say Peters Township, they stuck to their half-acre minimum for a long time, and these PRDs were forcing them to, first of all, the people think when the PRD comes in, we have a big public hearing, they immediately think the developer's trying to do an end around the zoning, which he is. I mean, that sort of is a PRD. There is some concessions. So right away, there's a little animosity because the developer, he's trying to make money. He doesn't want to build houses. He wants to make money, okay? So I think that the neighborhoods are nice. They're all half acre, Windsor, Floral Hill. But you aren't going to get the developers here. If you just say, we like our zoning the way it is, we're not going to do the PRD, we're going to stay to half acre lots, then the cost of the roads, cost of the stormwater, cost of the drainage and all that, developers said, well, in order to have half acre lots, we have to sell these houses for $650,000. And we're only can sell about a handful of them and then we're stuck. So, I mean, if we want to do that, I mean, then we have to accept developers that are going to walk away from South Strabane unless there's something that's really choice that they want to build. Because I think the PRDs, although they're well intended, there's flaws to it. And, you know, the biggest issue I see is you want to have setbacks, make it a little more open, have bigger setbacks, have wider roads. You know, the roads are bullshit. I mean, roads, I grew up in Squirrel Hill. Beechwood Boulevard's 50-foot wide and it's a 2-lane road, but it's a boulevard. I mean, there's never any traffic on it. I mean, it's easy to drive, but if you try to establish that here, the developer's gonna laugh you out of town now. So, I mean, we're living in a different world now. But the roads have gotten narrower. I mean, if you have people park on both sides of the road instead of parking in their driveway, which I think everybody should park in their driveway and quit being lazy, park on the road. I mean, if you get these cars right side by side, they block the road. You can't get between them. You know, I mean, in order to have a road where you're gonna have parking on one side of the road, you need the pavement at least 36 feet wide, 2 12-foot lanes, and another 12 feet. And that's a non-starter too. And then the stormwater bullshit is out of control. You'd never build Windsor Highlands or Washington Woods today. You wouldn't be able to build them with just considering stormwater, you know? Now, I'm not saying stormwater is bad. I mean, I live on this little cul-de-sac on the back corner. They ran all my stormwater down a right-of-way, down the sewer into the woods. Well, now it looks like the Grand Canyon down there. I mean, this is down cut and eroded trough that's 8 feet deep that wasn't there before. But, you know, there's limitations to it with our terrain, and we got to impose the stormwater and a lot of this stuff. I don't know whether we're going to find developers that are going to come clamoring to South Strabane, even though it's a nice area, it's convenient.
Well, I think, good. I don't think we're saying what, I don't think I'm gonna speak for the majority of the board, but I don't think we're saying there should not be PRDs. It's just,
We need to look at it better, and we need to, I gotta say, the Cameron Estates, the side-by-side duplexes over here. I have friends that live there, nice big trees, quiet streets, it's really nice. Now, I don't know what those sold for.
price.
They were pricey,
Yeah.
but they do have a pool, I think, and an
They do have a
association.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that place does.
Yeah.
Cameron's-
I mean, I would buy a house there if I could afford it. I would not buy a house, a townhouse where you guys are, because it's.
I'll tell you what.
But you need both.
You know what?
But
Dan?
you need both,
Well,
because you need affordable housing.
I understand that.
And some people, there's nothing wrong with some.
Right here's on section 8.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I wouldn't
you
even
know,
call it,
but I think-
affordable is
I
a
think-
relative term.
I think if we do what I suggested, and we look at what works in each one of these,
Yeah.
and what's a negative, and, you know, maybe there's some things that are just benign, we can look at all of those things, and I think that, you know, Brandon's done such a great job with this spreadsheet, I think it begs for another one.
Where said you said that?
Although bigger
Engineer
numbers
likes
would be
the
better.
Yeah, I can't read that.
You know, a little
Nope,
background
can't
on
do it.
Cameron Estates, and it goes back before Brandon and Dan. You know, there was more townhouses proposed. When they started, it, they went back and they were building houses, and then towards where those townhouses were, there was gonna be more townhouses, okay? Well, the developer at the time said, you know what, the single-family homes are the hot ticket. We're not selling these duplex townhouses.
You talk
okay?
Bradford.
Right here,
Cameron.
right at Cameron
Cameron, I
Estates.
don't remember that.
Yeah,
I remember
they-
Bradford switching them out.
Yeah,
but
same thing,
Yeah,
Bradford.
they did.
Bradford switched them out.
Yeah.
Cameron did the same thing. I don't
Cameron
remember.
switched to single family, okay? Now, you'd think the people would say, oh, we're gonna like it, it's more like a neighborhood, we're not gonna have as many of these higher density duplexes, okay? Guy came and sat right there, I know him, he passed away now, he's a bona fide millionaire, all right? He started bitching because his little HOA fee was gonna go up because there wasn't gonna be as many of these duplexes on the HOA as there was before. And he was gonna bitch his HOA was gonna go up from $150 to $200. And I know he's worth about 5 or 10 million, okay? I wanted to sock him. So, you know, it's hard, people are fickle, it's hard
Maybe
to
I'm
figure
turning the
out.
recorder off.
It's hard to figure a lot of times, it really is. you know?
I gotta say though, the side by sides over there are very nice.
They are
And
very
they're-
good.
Yeah, those are.
Yeah, I know somebody lived in one for a while.
But the product offerings that come through and what the developers, especially the sophisticated ones, they know what's selling, they know what people want. The question is, I think more for us is where do we want these things? And what kind of controls do we want to be able to have to dig in a little bit with what they're doing? And I do think there should be allowed to be a mix. And I do like the developments. They said they may change, like how Bradford been like, we want to provide 2 different product offerings here, and we want to have the townhomes. But their market, when they came back and they came to us and asked, because they had to ask to change it. And they came in and said, you know what? This is what we're seeing as people want the single families, and most of us prefer that. That's just our own thoughts on housing. We like that anyway. So that was easy for us, I think, to say, yeah, get rid of those towns.
I gotta say though, a recent applicant who wanted to buy a piece of land and build 271 houses on. It's like they find a piece of property and they're loving that property, but they're not thinking about people getting in, getting out, infrastructure, any of that stuff.
Well, I don't care about that.
Well,
That's what we have to do.
The code doesn't force them to it.
Yeah,
The what?
The code does not force them or compel them to it.
Right.
because they know they're gonna sell them. So that's
Right.
where I think that's what I'm talking about for us, is where we come in.
I think, you know, sometimes the process itself takes so long to get it through, the market conditions change anymore. Like I said, they're fickle, you know, when they started this process a year and a half ago, duplexes were the big ticket. Well, interest rates go down and everything becomes a little more affordable. All of a sudden, everybody wants single family. So they'll come in, they'll want to
They
change.
modify it.
I mean, Bradford Woods, how many times did that go back and forth? I mean, remember, it went back,
It went back.
it was probably 5, 6 years.
Yeah,
At least.
Yeah, over the period of time,
Yeah.
from the time that they got their original master plan approved. Yeah,
Yeah.
till now, that project has been going on for at least 6 years,
yeah.
maybe
They
longer.
had 2 developers, that first one, then other guys came in and bought those guys out,
Yeah,
they're from New York.
yeah, the
Went
New
there
York
and that.
guys.
Because there was a developer there before that went on and on and on, and just didn't pan out for him.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with all styles of housing. I'm just, let me put it that way. Okay. I understand that there's an entry level house for certain people, and they want to maybe move up and move up or move back down, you know,
Yeah.
senior citizens like myself. It just, we seem to be drawing a certain kind of developer that wants to maximize their profit beyond belief.
That's
Okay.
every developer.
Well, I
yeah, I mean,
understand that,
that's-
but there's some
yeah.
developers who are very savvy about, you know, if you put some trees in and some sidewalks in and a hiking trail and maybe a pool,
Yeah,
you can charge a little bit more.
mhm,
It doesn't have to be everybody on top of everybody.
right. And the developers will tell you, and they've been saying this for quite a while, and I believe them to an extent, because I'm in this situation myself. People don't want big half acre, 3/4 acre lots. They don't want to mow all that grass. They don't want to pay somebody at $80 every week to mow it. And so they can't let it go to hell. So, you know, the big lots are not, you know, the developers will tell you, they look nice. Everybody likes the look of the neighborhood, but as far as selling them, people say they don't want that much property anymore. I mean, that's what they'll tell you, and I tend to believe it.
I agree with
So-
Fred. I think we have to have areas that we can provide where you can have PRDs, but it's so unique and it's very tricky, I think, in our area. It's the map. To me, it's the map is probably as big a part of this as what the PRD actually says. Because once you change something from an R1, then a PRD can go in there. And then, so you want to make sure you know what you're talking about. Where is an area that it's okay for? Now, when we've changed, so that like we changed for Meadows Lane?
Yeah.
Was commercial, right? But it was like that, there's nothing wrong. To me, I don't have any problem with that change based on it's bordered, surrounded by residentials and R2s, right? Would we make it R3?
R4.
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 Burkett and Meadows Landing.
Burkett, Meadow Lanes are R4, because they're in those areas and they're right on 19. If you're gonna do it anywhere, that's where you do a higher density area is direct access to 19.
You got the commercial frontage on 19.
Yeah, and another thing about, you know, there's, you know, it's talking about like the commercial zone and the commercial activity that we have here. Trying to look ahead in the next 5 to 10 years to what's going to happen with that because of the change in marketing strategy for commercial goods. You know, we may be looking at a situation, you know, where I'm hoping not, but it could be a situation where there's another Washington Mall situation where you have something that is just, I mean, that property should be attract. I mean, look at the location there. There should be people falling over themselves for that location, but nobody's looking for a commercial site right now. And I know there's some activity going on about what they have some plans there, but I have no idea what it is.
There are unique issues with that based on the ownership of that property.
Yeah.
Well, is the bigger problem than with that property not be, I think, my personal belief is one, that's what's created some of the problems.
But my point
Is
is.
so many people involved in
My
it.
point is that's an anecdotal thing, but the idea of what's happening with the commercial and retail, and what's going to be developed with it over the next 5 to 10 years, we don't know, and you know, we're kind of just guessing about that, and I think that the idea with Burkett Manor and with Meadows Landing is a good idea, because I don't think that those would be attractive from a commercial development standpoint in the in even the medium term.
We've got the retail pretty well.
Yeah,
I think we've got retail in South Strabane pretty well.
But housing to support it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I think that corridor, that 19 corridor, it's hard to argue against it. I think on that stretch, which includes Strabane Manor and those properties, that's where they should be, I think, when you're looking at it on a map. But picking a place out of nowhere, like, and again, to like what Judy's talking about, when you have those areas that have the half acre to acres all the way around them, and then if you're gonna throw in a high density spot in there in the middle of it, and you gotta go past all that stuff to get out of it, that concerns me.
Who's, Norris?
I just got a letter this week. Their sewage was, their planning module, received exemption, so I mean, they're still going through the process of state agencies, but, they want to start this year, that's what they.
I know.
But for us. So they're just one letter closer.
I just wanna see what happens with the rest of that part. So when they come in, those other lots are gonna sell. More commercial.
Yeah, they'll go Arlington and Marshall.
Yeah. Tax.
Yeah.
I mean,
Menards will be a
well, the big draw.
big tax property taxes.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna see him,
Well,
yeah, I'm gonna see him soon.
It'll be
Once they
big for,
get that
it'll
done
be big for the
next year.
mercantile tax too.
yeah. Brandon, how many lots do we have up there left, commercial lots?
Once they get.
I know they've changed it around, a number of times, up by Menards, Hobby Lobby, there's still parcels.
It's gotta be 4 or 5 lots.
The middle too.
Yeah,
Are they losing that, isn't, because isn't, with Menards coming in, that one at the end, didn't that one go away?
No,
No, that one's still gonna be,
all they're gonna straighten the road out, basically.
okay, so that one stays.
That first bend, they're gonna
Yeah.
take that out. But I
Okay,
think the rest of that stuff won't stay. I think Menards has extra space up there. They didn't take it all.
yeah.
There's some space, I don't know if it's buildable.
I mean, I think, we have that, over there, one developer came in with that high rise, senior, but the restrictions on that development had that it had to have a commercial establishment in the
We
first
got rid of
floor.
that.
Yeah, and we tried to say, well, okay, you could put a coffee shop or something in the first floor of that, and it would satisfy that requirement. And then we said, well, why don't we just get rid of it? Who cares if it's all senior apartment? Who cares if there's a Starbucks in the first floor, But for some reason, that fell flat.
I love that.
I don't know why, but
You got
the supervisor,
Look at Pittsburgh.
yeah, the supervisors killed that.
No, that's not
No,
true,
they-
you're wrong. They didn't kill it. They
They
killed it
sued
at
us.
first, then they came back and they gave us money to fix Ferry Road. And they were allowing it that. So it got approved eventually, Fred, and they gave us money to fix Ferry Road and then they didn't come. I think, Brandon, did they not have the money or something? Something happened, just,
No, they did not give us money to fix Perry Road.
They were
There was
supposed
an
to.
agreement, of $100,000, a settlement.
settlement of a
On
lawsuit,
building permit issuance,
Yeah.
but
they just never
they're
did the
not-
project.
Yeah, they
They never did
that
the
project.
project.
and it wasn't seniors, it was just apartments.
Yeah,
it was
was
just
condos.
apartments,
Yeah.
but they were supposed to be like empty nesters and that kind of
They're-
thing.
No, I don't think they said that. They did not, they did not really specify, they just said apartments. I remember.
Well, that's gonna be, weren't they, condos, townhouse type?
Yeah,
But here, like I said, you guys have to look at what's coming up the road and what things could, and I know you're gonna be like, Judy, we can't do that, blah, 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 but you need to, because like, so I see what's going on in western Pennsylvania, and it's gonna get ugly before, and that's what I'm concerned about, and especially with high density living. And I'm not, I hear what you guys are saying, and I agree with that to a degree with, building by the commercial and all that, but you look at Peters, yeah, they've given in and they did, have you seen the townhomes in Peters? Oh my gosh, like, they're just unbelievable.
yeah,
And when you talk about some of these parodies, if you go over and look at Cecil, there's neighborhoods that do have a mix and they've got the townhomes, but they're so high end. They're not, and not that where Brandon was is low end, but they're much nicer than Strabane Manor. Like the whole plan, the homes in it are $400,000 or $500,000 homes. And then the townhomes are that's low end. So like, real quick.
I'm sorry, Jay, go ahead, Brandon. We need to move on a little bit. I'm sorry.
My
Jay.
question though.
So, we still have an outlaw building here.
Yeah.
It's vacant, this is, I think this was subdivided, so you have the
Yeah.
car wash.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
vacant lot here. This is about 63 to 70,000 square feet that's been approved.
Let's
Yeah.
move that straight through.
When I spoke to the Stenberg Group, they indicated that they're not gonna be developing this corner. This road will change, circulation pattern because of the NARS, then this will be NARS.
So you said they're not developed, that's what I was talking about.
Correct, right, they've indicated to me that they're not looking to develop or put anything on this parcel.
what about
Why?
next to Hobby Lobby there?
Well,
That's the parcel.
Right, so this is the vacant parcel next to Hobby Lobby,
Okay,
so they've indicated that they don't plan to fill anything with this right now.
Right now.
Because that road's going to, relocate, so that will take some of that away.
At least 1, 2, 3, those ones we were talking about in that lawsuit.
Brandon, did you say that orange,
Last far as I know.
that like, all the way over where the road is like a roller coaster. That's developable, they can develop that.
So we're looking at probably a maximum 70,000 square feet here. We're probably looking at another 25 to 30,000 square foot here. That's similar to this. You're probably looking at the same, so if that's 70 plus 30 plus 30, so it's 130,000 square feet. This is gonna be, 200. So, and then they would be built out.
What's a residential house? What's a residential house?
Much less there, yeah.
Okay, so I guess what I've heard, and I think Joe's suggestion was great, is to look at the PRDs we have now, see what worked, see what didn't. And actually put a narrative together of what we are looking for. Why does it look like this? Well, because of this regulation.
What
And
are
we
we
can
gonna, how are we gonna-
understand what the regulation looks like.
I think another thing on these PRDs, Brandon, we lay them off everything on these HOAs. Developers are, oh, the HOA will take care of it, the HOA will take care of it, that's all, don't worry about it, you know? Well, bullshit. The HOA, first of all, doesn't come into effect until it's 75% built out, typically. So for a couple years, you don't have 75% build out, you have the developer, he still is the HOA, you know? And I think the township needs to take a little more responsibility in these, but the township is shied away from it. You know, they say, oh, that's you guys do the maintenance, you guys do the O&M. And I think there's this tension between HOAs and the township. And I sort of think the HOA the township should take a little more ownership in these developments than they do. Leave it up to the HOA.
These stormwater ponds.
Stormwater ponds is one, you know, I think also, you know, Joe and I talked about, I think, you know, up in Peters, there's an architectural review board that looks at the actual look of these places, you know, that, you know, so there is some influence on how these places appear. And I know Peters doesn't, and that's why some of these places are high end, but I mean, they've required that.
Yes, and we do have that design, we have that in our PRD regulations. So they are required to submit those floor plans, required to submit the,
Elevations and.
the elevations. I just know that hasn't been a real focus, in the last couple of ones that we've done, but, yeah, I mean, if we want to get more detailed on that, we sure can.
The tricky part, here, when you're talking about the stormwater management facilities, if they call them that get turned over to the HOA at some point from the developer. Me personally, I don't want the township responsible for those and maintaining those.
You are correct.
I don't, and there's a lot of reasons why.
Right.
The part of it is, I mean, I get that. If I lived in that community, heck yeah, I want the township to be responsible for that. But being a representative of the township in a sense and being, you know, of everyone else, when development goes in, they put the stormwater in, some other resident lives down here somewhere and that stormwater is a problem and causes a problem for that person down here. But if the township has taken responsibility for all that stuff, then the developer is getting off the hook in a way. To me, the developer is getting off the hook in a way. Like you,
Yeah,
it's
I know what you're saying, but
we regulate that now, along with
I mean,
mostly through
you
conservation
know, if the
district.
person
but-
living down here is affected by the stormwater up here, there's something wrong with that. They have not been in compliance. If the thing is half full of sediment, and it only holds half the water that it used to have, there's regulatory compliance issues that they need to be turned into the DEP and tell them, hey, this stormwater pond is now out of compliance, now Joe Schmo.
But it's the
down here-
HOA stormwater,
Yeah.
law, not
But
the
the
township
HOA
stormwater.
they
You
pull
know.
their pockets out and go, oh, okay, now what are we supposed to do?
George did have them clean last year.
What's that?
George, the gentleman that has come in with the issues with the HOA, he was their president, And he was on top of that. He started having that stuff cleaned out and everything at that HOA, but he's off their board now, so,
Spend your money.
but one of the other things.
Yeah, voted him out.
Yeah,
And
he-
raised
he-
her.
He actually did a
He did a good job
fantastic.
and he got voted out.
Because he didn't wanna let fences, which aren't allowed by what their thing says, and now they're gonna allow fences in there. So like none of the, they were supposed to you're supposed to take a vote and 2/3 or something have to agree with it. They didn't do it, they just changed it. And now
that's it.
people are living about that, and there's, like you said, the constant complaints about that. I have a couple quick questions. Burkett Manor, what is that supposed to be? Patio homes, townhomes?
I think they're like a patio.
Okay.
It's they're not cheap. They were like 400,000,
Look, I was
but they
gonna,
were smaller, closer together. and everything.
patio homes are, and this is something to look at too, and versus, what do you call it? What did we just say? Townhomes. The patio homes, if you go up into North Strabane Peters off of Waterdam, those things go for $500,000. And it is, if you've got your seniors, there's no kids, you've got that living with that, they're usually popular.
Mhm.
And they don't tend to lose their value like townhouses do. If you go and look at Bridgeville, there's a community up there off of Boyce Road, it's on both sides of it, and it's houses, it's condos.
Portland Farm.
Yeah, and it's everything, but now that's starting to go HUD. Glen Cannon's starting to go HUD, but at the back of it's brand new homes that are expensive. But the front of it where the townhomes are, or we're starting to go turn into HUD. So like, and to me, that's always a concern, because then that's another change in a community that can happen. But real quick, when Mark was concerned about this, he was more concerned about.
Who's Mark? What Mark are you talking
Mark
about?
Murphy, supervisor,
Why isn't he telling us this then?
because
Why
he
is it
said,
coming through you? I'm not yelling at you, I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to get it.
Sorry, like,
I'm
what?
trying to be
I mean,
helpful.
like, Mark can tell us whatever he wants to tell
But
us.
then maybe it should have been gone through and put down to you guys, but this is come up because Mark at a meeting goes, this is what I want. He went through
Well, I'd
this.
rather, if Mark has something to say, I'd rather hear,
I-
I'd rather hear from Mark.
That's fine,
So,
that's fine, Tom, but I'm
What else
saying,
do you
like,
have to say?
Well,
You're here, tell me what you
Come
think.
work next time, come to planning
Well,
commission.
we're moving
I
on.
guess I'm trying to explain why this was brought up, because it doesn't seem to have been explained, but anyway, like, one of the things with over here, this development, Washington Woods, the roads aren't wide enough, so the buses can't go up. So buses can't turn around, and that's been one of the, I've been in school board meetings where people are freaking out at the school board, and they're like, there's nothing we can do, the roads aren't wide enough, the buses can't go up. Now, this was
Exactly.
years ago, but, I mean, Donnie would know that, because I always said, but this was, oh, God, over 10 years ago, that would
The bus.
but that was a big thing, sorry.
Kids need to walk more.
Kids need to walk.
Freaking bus comes down my road and it stops at everybody's driveway. I'm like, man,
I
it's
just-
like a
I'm
chauffeur.
just telling you, one of the complaints that's been about that
Well, they
neighborhood.
walk and kids, but there's like 10 cars sitting there with their engines running, waiting for the bus to come.
And I guess like part of my thing is, and I'm hearing what everybody's saying, and I understand I'm not against development, I live a mile from Walmart, but why, like, it sounds like everybody's like we have to develop everything. We don't have to develop everything, we're pretty well developed in South Strabane. We could set limits that it could only be something better that comes in. Why, we're prime property,
Okay.
why are we the ones?
All right, thanks.
Okay,
Okay, we go on to the
I
next.
wanted to bring-
Last
Right, one thing
comment
about-
on item
Right.
4.
Wait, when we were talking about stormwater management. And
Yes.
I bring this up because, and I've talked about this before, but not all the board members were here. I live in an R1. I have a stormwater problem that is resolved, except for the fact that I have a conveyance of stormwater from my neighbor across my property, which was taken care of, the cost of it was taken care of by the developer when I bought the property. But the reason that I was given that this exists is because, as I think Fred brought up earlier, that may have been a problem, or somebody brought it up earlier about Burkett Manor, that there's a lot more earth moving than they thought was going to be there. And that is what happened at East Point. There was a change in the grades on Terra Drive. And because of the grades on Terra Drive, those homes were all supposed to drain to Terra Drive and then down to the ponds. But they didn't, so when they built the homes, they just ran the roof drains down over the hill to my property and to the Northrop property, and that's where the water came. So when I bought my property, I had to cut a deal with the Piats on the price of the property so that I'd have enough money to cover the conveyance, the stormwater conveyance from the property on Terra Drive down to the inlet on East Point. So that I only bring that up for the point that we don't have residential stormwater management ordinance in the township. So that the only control we have is when a development such as Burkett Manor is done, we need to make certain that and somebody has to make certain, I don't say that we, but somebody has to make certain that their stormwater management plan doesn't create an issue where you have a conflict with residences, where the water is running down from one residence to another. So so we have to make sure that kind of action is taken during the approval process and it's followed through during the construction process.
Thanks, Joe. All right, staff update.
That's it.
So be a quick one.
Transit authority tax amendment will be going for the board in the coming weeks. Also, the changes to the Berry Road that the group has discussed will be taking that back to the board and see where they're going to go with it. So, also, the board at the last meeting had went ahead and asked the planning commission to take a look at electric vehicle charging stations in commercial areas. So as you can see, they're popping up a lot more. This is coming from, this is where I guess fire and zoning meet. So I think the fire chief had in building inspections have a lot of concern with the ongoing, I don't want to use the proliferation of them, but they are coming in Giant Eagle, Tanger, they're coming in, even McDonald's wanted to do a couple. From a zoning standpoint, that takes away parking if they're going to restrict it. That starts to violate, take away the parking that the code standard.
Yeah.
Half the ones in Tanger
So what?
don't even work.
You know, I say some of that, I say so what,
There's
Brad?
guidance.
On taking away parking, I say so what?
Okay.
You know, if we lose 4 parking spaces for electric vehicle charging, but we have got 200 more spaces than we need. So what?
Just don't put any at Chick-fil-A.
They may be charging their vehicle, but they're probably in shop.
No charging stations at Chick-fil-A.
Right. But you know, fast food restaurant, charging.
I'm not sure it's gonna get up going in the dog and hamburger. Coming back up.
No.
But you know, the public safety concern, these things should have more of a review and life safety, life protection type of review. Because of some of the things that the US fire administration is putting out, and things that are going on nationwide that the fire chiefs.
Well, it's interesting because it's, again, I can see the similarities. It's not nearly the same as putting in a gas pump, but you're talking about a different set of electric service, right? I mean, there's still just 220, right? I mean, it's not, aren't
They
they?
got this high speed one, really.
Are they?
What are they, Brett? They aren't 220, the chargers.
Well, we have a whole
Yeah,
thing,
there's a
the
full-
power is upgraded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just more involved with them. We need some code language to help make sure that if they're installing them correctly, we have inspection powers, occupancy authority, and making sure that, you know, given the proximity of these electric charging stations, structures, that could be somewhat hazardous if something does go wrong. So there are some things that
They never put them next to structures, never. I have an electric vehicle. When I stop on the way to Rochester, New York, it's always 4,000 miles out in the parking lot.
And then we have the other miscellaneous text amendments that Sister Irene and I will be getting together, formalizing and bringing to you in that. All right, for public.
Okay. All right.
I'll let you know, Brandon, at the start, because Department of Energy. We have almost $1 billion, $1 billion for electrification of the interstate systems. We're putting charging stations almost every rest area. So there, you're gonna see a lot.
I wish West Virginia.
Joe made a motion to adjourn. Jay made a motion to adjourn.
You're on mute, so.
Hey, I get you on each end of you.
Yeah.
Jay made a motion to
I'll
adjourn.
second.
I second it.
Oh.
Plenty of seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.